Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show where we take you through the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. We're currently in the Qatar Grand Prix weekend, but which stories have caught our attention this week? This week we look at why Sir Lewis Hamilton surprisingly didn't want to test a Ferrari at the postseason Abu Dhabi test, why some believe that IndyCar drivers aren't good enough for Formula 1 despite Cadillac coming into the sport in a few years' time, and we also react to the confirmation that Qatar has bought a major stake in the Audi Formula 1 team. All that and a whole lot more is in today's show. Let's dive in. So I've got a breaking news here for you guys. Mick Schumacher is going to leave the Mercedes-AMG Formula 1 team as its test and reserve driver for the 2025 season. This has been officially confirmed by Mercedes just now that Schumacher will leave at the end of the season. Let's just go through what's been said here. Full article on the F1chronicle.com. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 team today confirmed that reserve driver Mick Schumacher has chosen to leave his role at the conclusion of the 2024 season. Mick joined the team at the start of 2023 and has spent the last 2 years as reserve driver. Along with his duties in the team simulator, Mick has also provided valuable on-track feedback during various tests and races. He has also competed for Alpine in the World Endurance Championship in the past season, scoring the manufacturer's maiden podium in Fuji, Japan. Toto Wolff said the following on this: Mick's hard work, diligence and determination in his role as reserve driver has been vital for the team over the past 2 years. From his work in the simulator, testing of various cars and being part of the trackside team, we couldn't have asked for any more from him. From day one, he fitted into the team with ease and has become an incredibly well-liked colleague for everybody at Brackley and Brixworth. However, Mick is first and foremost a racing driver. We have seen from both his time in F1 and this year with the performances in the World Endurance Championship that he is a racer of incredibly high caliber and one that deserves to be competing at the very best championships. As he moves into his next challenge, I would like to thank Mick personally for his contribution to our team and wish him all the best with the future in his endeavours. Schumacher said the following: I am grateful to Toto and the entire Mercedes team for the insights I have gained over these last 2 years. They have undoubtedly made me a more experienced racing driver because I have got to know the engineering side better. But watching these cars race and not sitting in the cockpit myself is tough. I want to go back to focusing 100% of my energy on racing. I want to be fully committed to the sporting side of motorsport. Ultimately, it is racing that you want to do as a driver. It is racing that gives you that feeling you love. Right, so yeah, there's the statement from them. And yeah, I mean, we kind of knew this was coming. We knew that Valtteri Bottas is more than likely going to replace Schumacher as the official reserve driver at Mercedes for next season. I think that Bottas could well be back on the grid in 2026 with Cadillac. Personally, I think that's definitely a possibility. And obviously there's only room for one test and reserve driver, so Mick has got the boot effectively with that, which I think is harsh, but that's the way it is. And going off the statement that he said and also Toto said, it seems as though he wants to get back into racing full time and not be a test and reserve driver. So what is that going to mean? Well, I mean, we could see him. I think he's probably going to continue going in WEC, to be honest. I think he'll continue going with Alpine next season. Mick, of course, I mean, some people might think he might go into, go with Mercedes instead, but I don't see that because they're going into LMGT3, which is like the second tier of WEC. Alpine is with the hypercars, so I think he might just be more hands-on with the hypercar program at Alpine. I also think that he could well remain the reserve driver for Alpine, or become the reserve driver for Alpine, I should say, because that role is being vacated by Jack Doohan, who's of course going to be in a full-time race seat with Alpine in 2025. But going off the statement of what he's saying, he doesn't want to be a test and reserve driver. He wants to be a racing driver in a top professional series such as WEC. Some people think that he might go to IndyCar, but I feel like that ship has sailed. Prema have announced their lineup in IndyCar for their debut season, and Mick Schumacher's not in it. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think for my money, he's going to stay as an Alpine driver in the hypercars and not be the reserve driver potentially for Alpine. Why would you say those things if you don't want to be the reserve driver for Alpine? Which is fair enough, because he's got commitments in a different series. So for my money, I would say that's what's happening. What do you think, guys? Where is Schumacher going, and who is going to replace him at Mercedes as their reserve driver for next year? Thoughts in the comments below as always. So, interesting article here on the F1Chronicle.com concerning a certain Sir Lewis Hamilton, a man who was leaving Mercedes-AMG Formula 1 team at the end of this season and going to Ferrari for what has to be one of the most anticipated driver moves in a very, very long time. Probably since Hamilton himself moved from McLaren to Mercedes back in 2013. But there's been a lot made about the young driver test, or the post-season test in Abu Dhabi after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Now, this was concerning Ferrari basically saying, well, we want Hamilton to test our car, and Mercedes saying, no, you can't do that because he's still contracted to us for the end of the season, and we also have things that he has commitments to basically for Mercedes during that time. But apparently, Hamilton didn't want to test the Ferrari anyway at this. Strange comment, but let's have a look at why he said this. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com. Lewis Hamilton told his future Ferrari boss, Frederick Vasseur, that he didn't want to make his debut in a red cockpit in the post-season Abu Dhabi Grand Prix test. While the man he is replacing, Carlos Sainz, will be in action for his new team Williams after the season finale, Hamilton will be busy elsewhere. I don't want to block him, Vasseur said, referring to Sainz. As for why Hamilton is not being released by Mercedes, boss Toto Wolff, the Frenchman added, "You will have to ask Toto. They have a contract, so I didn't even ask Toto." Wolff confirmed the story. Fred didn't ask. I think it maybe is differences between if you're going to Williams, but we have contractual agreements with sponsors. Wolff said Hamilton is embarking on a post-season farewell after so many years with Mercedes, with lots of activities already planned. Lewis and I spoke about it briefly, and he said, I guess that Abu Dhabi test is not going to work, and I said, yeah, I don't think it's going to work. When asked for his version in the Qatar paddock, Hamilton admitted that he will absolutely be slightly disadvantaged by not testing the 2024 Ferrari car after Abu Dhabi. It will definitely slow down the process and make the start of next year more difficult, but we will do everything we can to make up for it, said the 7-time world champion. I know Fred wanted me to do the test, but I was in two minds. The idea of getting behind the wheel of a red car for the first time in Abu Dhabi did not excite me too much. In an ideal world, I would take the first runs to be done without much scrutiny. Toto and the team have already planned ahead for me to do some meets with sponsors and say goodbye to them, so I don't think it would have been allowed to take part in the test, even if I'd asked, Hamilton insisted. I have a contract with Mercedes until the 31st of December, and it's not a problem for me because I told Fred in advance that I didn't really want to do it. I mean, Hamilton is fairly experienced in Formula 1 anyway, let's be honest here, so I don't think he needs it as much as what some other guys would as well. It's fair enough, really. I think at the end of the day, he starts as a Ferrari employee in the new year. It's the same with Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey is checked out of Red Bull now and has been for quite some time, but he doesn't officially start as an Aston Martin head of design and board person as well until March, isn't it? So, it's the same thing with drivers. They've got a contract. Mercedes want Hamilton to honour the contract, and Hamilton doesn't sound too disappointed about having to honour it. But there we go, guys. Are you disappointed about not being able to see Hamilton in the post-season test at Ferrari? It's going to be a weird image seeing him dress up in red for the first time. But I guess we'll have to wait until pre-season testing, or the car reveal, for the actual car in 2025, but both of which will be February, although Ferrari has said they're not going to be attending the F1 car reveal thing in London, not with a 2025 car anyway. They're going to do their own one, so we'll probably see them at some point in February. That'll be the first time, and the first time him driving the car will also be in February as well for the pre-season test in Bahrain. So, interesting article here on the F1Chronicle.com, guys. Now, I've already kind of hypothesized and predicted who will be lining up for Cadillac Racing in Formula 1 in 2026. So check out my suggestions in that video, but there are a couple of IndyCar drivers in there that I thought are in with a shot of making their Formula 1 debut with the team in a couple of years' time. But apparently, according to some, the stars of IndyCar are not good enough for Cadillac. That's a provocative statement if I've ever heard one, but let's have a look at what's been said here, guys. Full article on F1Chronicle.com as always. Ralph Schumacher doubts an IndyCar driver is good enough to fulfill one of Cadillac's Formula 1 seats in 2026. Team advisor and Formula 1 legend Mario Andretti revealed this week that Colton Herta, who already drives for Mario's son's Michael Andretti's team in IndyCar, is the running in the running for a Cadillac F1 seat. From our standpoint, I think the play at the beginning would have to be one experienced driver. Nationality doesn't matter. And then a young American talent, the 1978 world champion, told NBC News earlier this week. Ralf Schumacher, uncle of the seat-hunting former F1 driver Mick Schumacher, agrees that it is at least making sense for Cadillac to prefer to field American drivers. On the other hand, he told Sky Deutschland that IndyCar level is not the same as Formula 1 level. We've seen that on numerous occasions when they test. But maybe there is some super talent lurking over there that no one has found yet, the former F1 driver added. Not surprisingly, he thinks that Mick Schumacher would be a safe pick for Cadillac. I mean, you gotta help out your own. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I assume that they will get a proven element in the car to get them a starting point, Ralph said. They're starting from scratch with everything, and that is extremely difficult. That's why in this case you have to have someone who you know can do it and who you can rely on. Apart from the driver question, Schumacher does expect Cadillac to eventually succeed in F1. It will of course take some time before GM comes on board as an engine manufacturer, although it's a huge corporation and whatever they tackle will be worth it in the end, said the German. All of this is important in F1 because it sends a strong signal when such a global player wants to get into the premier class of racing. Formula 1 is continuing to grow. I'm looking forward to there being 11 teams because that means 2 more places for young drivers. We know how difficult it is at the moment with 20 cars. In 2026 we will have 10% more seats available. Maths. Yeah. Right, I mean, I don't know about this. I mean, there is definitely an argument to say that IndyCar drivers aren't up to the standard of Formula 1. I don't know about that. I mean, when was the last time that a driver went from IndyCar into Formula 1 and did really well? I mean, you're talking a long time ago, back in the kart days. You know, Juan Pablo Montoya, Jacques Villeneuve, they both came from IndyCar and did very well in Formula 1. You know, Villeneuve being a champion and obviously Montoya getting close to being a champion as well. But in more recent times, who was the last one? Who was the last one to do that? Although, on the counter-argument side of things, there have been quite a few Formula 1 drivers to go over to IndyCar and they haven't particularly done amazingly either. I mean, Grosjean, he's had some success, you know, but he's not exactly gone there and dominated. You know, Rubens Barrichello back in the day, he did all right. But, you know, there haven't been any champions going from F1 to IndyCar in a very long time. I mean, who was the last? Was it Nigel Mansell? Back in the 90s, is he the last one to do that? I mean, he won the championship in IndyCar, obviously, but you're talking 30 years ago now, over 30 years, in fact. So there is a big difference between the series. Although that kind of difference is getting narrower, I would say, because IndyCar is moving more towards road courses, as they call them, circuits, towards an F1. There's less ovals on the calendar than there ever has been in IndyCar now. So there is that. I would like to see it. I would like to see, and I said it in my video as well, I would like to see what Colton Herta could do. I would like to see what Alex Palou could do. I would like to see what Pato O'Ward could do in Formula 1. I think they all have a reasonable shout to at least give it a go, and then we know. And even then, it's not a direct comparison because some drivers might adapt better to Formula 1 than others. So there's a lot of different things at play here, but I think to discount IndyCar drivers so flagrantly, is that the word, flagrantly? I don't know. So easily is a bit short-sighted, I'd say. I'd be a bit more open to an IndyCar driver coming to F1, and if they don't succeed, they don't succeed. But then we know. What do you guys think? Who would you like to see from IndyCar given a chance in Formula 1 with Cadillac Racing? Let us know in the comments. A rather provocative article and a provocative statement, I think, on the F1 Chronicle for this video here. Would Max Verstappen have won the driver's title in a McLaren? I presume that is this year, 2024, the year of our Lord. And somebody out there questioning whether Verstappen would have won the world title in a McLaren. I'll give my thoughts at the end of this because I know this is very much going to anger some people, just even for the thought of it. But let's have a look at it. Let's read the article out and then let's dissect it like we always do here on the F1Chronicle.com, guys. Full article on the website as always. Max Verstappen's 4th consecutive championship triumph in 2024 has also put a spotlight on how it went wrong for his main rival Lando Norris. Verstappen wrapped up the title with 2 races to spare despite no longer sitting in the fastest car in the field. The Dutchman declared in Las Vegas that he would have secured the championship much earlier had he been in Norris's McLaren. When asked if Verstappen is entitled to make a comment like that, Red Bull advisor Dr. Helmut Marko told Österreich yes, because he's certainly right. This year, no driver other than Max would have won the World Championship for us. He certainly did not have the best car. Norris hit back, declaring that Verstappen would definitely not have emerged victorious this season in a McLaren. No one ever in the history of Formula 1 has come back from the size of deficit that I had, he said. No one, ever. The advantage they had in the beginning of the season over everyone was way more than we've had. It's true, it was the biggest gap. I don't know if if you go back through the history of Formula 1, obviously because the points have changed over the years, it's 25 points now for a victory. It used to be 10, before that it was actually 9 points back in the day. So I don't know if you converted the points to the modern system that anybody has come back from that size of a deficit, but I think even then, no one has managed to ever do it. But this was a very strange season, and I will get into why I think there's more to it than that. Not everyone agrees with the British driver, including Dutch racer Jeroen Bleekenmolen. I've said that wrong, I do apologise. Urine, let's go urine. Who told Ziggo Sport that 2024 revealed Norris's weaknesses? When Verstappen was driving for Toro Rosso, he was once ordered to move aside for his teammate Carlos Sainz. He didn't do that. Norris could have had that attitude more often towards his teammate Oscar Piastri this season. That's part of it. You want to be world champion. Speaking to Le Journal de Montreal, the 1997 world champion Jacques Villeneuve puts more blame with McLaren and Piastri's manager Mark Webber, who he says appears to have negotiated a deal with strict no team orders clauses. Even though they use team orders at times, I'm not so sure about that, Jacques. Unfortunately for Lando, McLaren didn't help him, said Villeneuve. It's as if the team didn't want him to win the championship, which is strange. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think they very much wanted Lando to win the championship, but they also didn't use team orders every time to give him the advantage. At the end of the day as well, if he's referring to the thing in Hungary, that's, for me, that was fair enough. I don't have a big problem with that. And in the end, it made no difference anyway, because Verstappen still won the title, and he would have won the title in Vegas anyway. As for Piastri's contract, Villeneuve added, there are terms that protect him that a new driver should never have. Urine agrees. Decisions were made that I don't understand at all. The best example being Hungary, when Norris had to step aside for Piastri. They were missing the bigger picture. There appeared to be a lot of uncertainty within the team, he said. They responded too late to a new situation in which they had the best. McLaren focused for a long time completely on the development of the car to close the gap in terms of pure speed. They succeeded in that, but not on the operational part, and that becomes painfully visible when you are not driving for places 5 to 10, but for the title, because the smallest mistake is then punished. As for Norris, Urine says that the contrast with Verstappen was made crystal clear in 2024. Verstappen is so confident that he never looks at the others, he said. Norris looks around a lot more to see what other drivers are doing. He certainly needs to work on that. But on the other hand, that killer instinct is something you either have or not. Right, interesting stuff there. Right, so let's not be around the bush. Let's just get to the whole statement about Verstappen being able to win the title in the McLaren. And yeah, I think he could have done, absolutely. Something that would have hamstrung him for sure would have been the team. I mean, you look at Verstappen's pace and he maximised every opportunity he had. And if you'd use that kind of thinking with how he performed and how his results were, and if you put him into the McLaren had the best car this season. They're leading the Constructors' Championship. I think Verstappen probably, to be honest, I think overall throughout the season he probably would have got even more wins. Let's just say you swap Lando and Max, right? You put Lando in the Red Bull and you put Max into the McLaren. You'll have Lando probably taking a big lead early in the season, but then after like Miami, you think about the chances that Lando Norris made mistakes in just himself. Let's take the team out of the equation here. Let's look at the mistakes that Lando Norris made. Spain, he got beat off the line. At Canada, he should have won that. Verstappen would have won that as well if he was in a McLaren. So that's 2 wins right there. Then you've also got some other times as well, like Italy, where there was mistakes there with team orders and stuff like that. That won't have helped. There was a mistake in qualifying as well in Baku. There's a lot of times when Norris himself made mistakes and the team made mistakes too, and that didn't help. So overall, to be honest, I feel like Verstappen, if he was in the McLaren, I think he would have won the championship. I don't agree with what the likes of Norris are saying. I feel like McLaren, this has been a big learning year for them now. They are a team that are expected to win now, and that's a very different kind of pressure, and that's a very different kind of approach that you have to have when it comes to how you go about race weekends, how you go about it operationally with the pit stops and everything like that. So I feel like that's also a thing too, and both Norris and McLaren are still pretty inexperienced when it comes to that. Red Bull are a well-oiled machine. They know how to win. Mercedes, they're a well-oiled machine. They know how to win. Ferrari, they're kind of there, they're kind of not. I feel like they still operationally, probably, believe it or not, on the whole, have been quite fine. Shockingly, I know they've not made that many glaring errors for me this season. The car is, again, they've maximised the results, and that's why I feel like they've still got a chance of this Constructors' Championship going into the final 2 rounds of the season. McLaren haven't got it sewn up yet, not by any stretch. But what do you guys think? Would Verstappen have won the world title if he was driving for McLaren and Lando Norris was driving in the Red Bull? I think he would have done personally. But your thoughts in the comments below as always. So this has been rumoured for some time now, but the state of Qatar has bought a stake in the Audi Formula 1 team. Of course, Sauber have been bought by Audi. That official takeover will happen in the 2026 season in terms of a rebranding. They'll also be having their own power unit they'll be making as well. And yeah, off the back of that, Norbert Haug, who I believe is one of the main guys at Mercedes, or at least used to be anyway, has basically said that they want to be a major power in Formula 1, both Audi and then presumably Qatar as well. And the timing of this announcement is very, very interesting given the fact that obviously we're in the Qatar Grand Prix weekend now. The future of Qatar is secure in Formula 1. It's going to be on the calendar for the very foreseeable future for sure. I mean, I hope it never moves away from Losail. I do like that track, and a Doha street circuit would not be very good, but Qatar now stepping up its involvement in Formula 1, not only as having a race, having sponsors such as Qatar Airways, but now also being a major part of the Audi Formula 1 team. So let's have a look at what's been said here, guys. Full article on the F1 Chronicle as always. Qatar, via its sovereign wealth fund, is tipped to eventually own a full half of Audi's Formula 1 team. Swiss-based Sauber and the Qatar Investment Authority used the occasion of the Middle Eastern States Grand Prix this weekend to announce that Qatar is buying a significant minority stake in the team that will be called Audi from 2026. According to La Gazzetta dello Sport, reporting from the Losail circuit, Qatar's initial stake is to be believed around 30%. The transaction is subject to certain regulatory approvals, and Qatar's investment should rise to over 50% in an investment that ultimately could be worth up to $1 billion or more for Audi. It is the third state with a stake in Formula 1 after the Bahrain McLaren deal and also Saudi Arabia Aston Martin deal too, the specialist Italian newspaper reported. The move relieves pressure on Audi, whose parent Volkswagen is locked in one of its worst financial crises in decades. La Gazzetta also said that Audi CEO Gernot Dollner as saying, "We have decided to adopt a broad approach. The involvement of such an important player represents a milestone for our journey in Formula 1. Audi F1's Italian boss, Mattia Binotto, meanwhile, commented to the newspaper, This news is a great boost for our plans. It will certainly give us the opportunity to improve our infrastructure and the personnel at our disposal. But the greatest satisfaction is linked to the fact that we are achieving the objectives we have set ourselves. Qatar already owns 17% of Volkswagen. Didn't know that." When asked to comment on Qatar's part acquisition of the Audi project, former Mercedes F1 boss Norbert Haug told DPA, "I think that by 2030 at the latest, Audi should be able to compete for victories on a regular basis. I absolutely trust them to do this and applaud their courage to show their true colours in the premier class of motorsport, the only one that enjoys real global resonance." However, when asked to comment on the fact that Audi owns Sauber is the only team in 2024 without a single point, Haug replied, "Audi is not getting into Formula 1 to be at the back. They are doing this to prove to the world that Audi will become a major power in Formula 1. I wholeheartedly agree. They're not doing it to make up the numbers. They want to come into Formula 1 and dominate, just like Mercedes did in the early 2010s and then eventually did dominate in 2014. And obviously we've got a rule change coming up in 2026. We're probably going to have major rule changes coming up for 2030 as well, as Formula 1 will have to hit its net zero targets if it's to keep its promises. Now, what do I think about this? Well, I didn't know that about Qatar actually owning part of Volkswagen, so it's not really a great surprise, to be honest. Volkswagen owns Audi and like dozens of other car companies, Lamborghinis and stuff like that, Bugatti as well, of course. So it's not a great surprise in that sense. When I did hear this news, I thought, that's not amazing, is it? But it's just the way things are in Formula One. You know, you've got this investment coming from the Middle East and F1. It's nothing new. Mansour has been involved in McLaren, and he's Bahraini, or was Bahraini. I think he passed away not too long ago, actually, without looking it up. I do apologise if that's not the case, but I know he was heavily involved in McLaren and was a big, kind of a big boost for their success in the 80s and 90s. I think he's been involved, or was involved, I should say, for that long. And then obviously Saudi Arabia with Aramco, you know, all these, and being a major partner of Aston Martin as well. I mean, all these investments from the Middle East, it's just showing that that's where the money is. The money right now in Formula One is coming from two places: the United States and the Middle East. And that's why we have so many races in both of those country in terms of the US, and also region in terms of the Middle East. I mean, we've got Saudi Arabia, we've got Bahrain, UAE, Qatar. Don't rule out the likes of Kuwait joining the calendar as well one day. You know, I've seen rumors about that going around for a while now. And we all know that America wants more than 3 races, but they probably won't get it. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. I think that if those financial problems at Volkswagen are as bad as they say they are, which I have every reason to believe they are, then like we brought you originally on the F1 Chronicle a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so, when this news story first started to become public, it's not a surprise that they've done this, because the value of Formula One teams is absolutely humongous, and it's only going to grow. I mean, RB, according to their own CEO, RB are worth $1 billion US. Audi, their team is going to be worth more because of the financial backing that the team has. Yes, on the track right now, Sauber are the worst team on the grid. They're absolutely trash. There's no other way for it. That car is terrible. Next year will probably be quite similar, to be honest, but 26, it's a big reset, and Qatar sees the advantage of that. They could well get into Formula One and win as Audi straight away, pretty much. So it's not a done deal yet, but it will go through. I don't see any reason why this won't go through. And yeah, so it's just the way things are in Formula One. It's all about the money, and it's always been about the money to an extent. It really has been. It's nothing new. But yeah, Volkswagen right now are struggling. They need money. So selling off part of one of their assets in the form of the Formula One team, it's a smart business decision. It really is. So I mean, I'm not a fan of how the Sauber looks at the moment with the stake thing there, but we're probably going to see a Qatar Airways Audi team in 2026. But yeah, what do you think about it, guys? Are you disappointed that Audi aren't going and, you know, doing this themselves effectively? They're going to have that help from Qatar. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more content on the world of Formula One just like this.